HitMatch. Embrace its academic and professional reputation that has trained over 15,000 professionals in 10 years. Embrace HitMatch's numerous professional programs from HND to BTech, BSc, and MBA in the schools of Business and Management Sciences, Engineering and Technology, and the School of Transport and Logistics. Embrace HitMatch's professionalism, excellence, and consistency with solid mentorship from the University of Bamenda and the University of Boya. Embrace HitMatch's skills, development, expertise, and career orientation via workshops and academic field trips. Be part of the HitMatch family. Visit our Boya campus at Checkpoint Moliko and Douala campus at Carrefour Yoro, Jos, Bonamusadu. Contact 683-70-1720. The Higher Institute of Business Management and Technology, the University Institute for Professionals.
Hello, good evening televiewers. You're welcome to today's edition of Prime Hour on Mamidi Prime. This evening we are going to be looking at the alarming rate of sexual immorality amongst adults as well as young boys and girls in Cameroon. The videos are overwhelming on social media and actually raising lots and lots of concerns and worries in many quarters. We are going to be looking at what is happening, and also if time permits we would give appraisal from the studios of the June session that ended yesterday in I'm talking about the June parliamentary session that ended in Yaoundé. We are going to be looking at how validly the aspirations and the worries of the people are reflected in deliberations that are often take place out there at the Glass House in Yaoundé. We are discussing this with our panelists who are in the house already. Prof. Ambe Valentine Ngwa is our permanent consultant. He is in the house with us. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Salio. Good evening, Cameroonians. Good evening, viewers of Prime Hour. We thank God for the privilege to be here today again, and the strength is granted us to come and contribute our own quota of knowledge in building the society of our nation, Cameroon. Thank you very much.
We also are in the company of Professor Mark Anthony, who is a Panafricanist. He's also an educationist. Good evening, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Liu, and to my fellow panelists, I say you are welcome, and to the million viewers out there watching us this evening, I want to say good evening. And I believe that whatsoever we'll be discussing here this evening is actually supposed to be our proposals, and in one way or the other to help in nation building.
We're also in the company of Emmanuel Ndiwum, who is a member of civil society but also an educationist. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. Good evening to the million viewers of Prime Hour. A special good evening to Abdul Karim and his group on Facebook that have been promoting, of course, my media Prime in one way or the other, be it negative or positive. I know that you people are already on standby, and we'll be discussing here and waiting for your messages. Thank you, Mr. Liu.
I did not know that.
Yeah. He has his group on the Facebook, and his followers and his fanatics, who are every evening they are glued to Prime Hour. I'm happy that they are glued. Whether they glue are insult or whatsoever, they are promoting my media Prime.
Okay, special greetings to Abdul Karim, and I'm glad to know that he's also watching, and every other person who is also following the program through him. We're glad to know that you're following. We also are going to be in the company of Dr. Tata Emmanuel from China. Good evening, Doctor. Are you there?
Yeah, good evening, Brother Leo, and good evening to the other panelists there in the studio. It's always an honor. It's a pleasure once again for this opportunity to express my humble opinion on issues for nation building. Thank you very much.
Doctor, I'll start with you. I'll start the program with you, Doctor. When you look at what is happening in Cameroon, we're talking sexual immorality. Can you understand why we are where we are?
Thank you again, Brother Leo. I'm going to probably look at this specifically from the educational perspective. Looking at Cameroon as a wider school, because the behavior of every individual is a product of several things besides just his genetics. The society has always been that milieu where children have been raised, because, you know, typically in Africa we say that a child is born of parents but raised by the society. So those things that the young children growing today pick up from their environment, unfortunately, it's not actually the best examples, you know, to be exemplary for the elderly persons in Cameroon. If you want to go deep into what is the behavior of the elderly persons in Cameroon, what signals are they leaving behind? I mean, we're just recovering from scandals upon scandals. You know, you wouldn't be able to count all of them in Cameroon, where we find persons who are supposed to be examples for young people to follow, get themselves or plunge themselves to several sexual scandals. You see, when such things continue to become reoccurrent, it leaves a negative signal to the young persons, who begin to lose their self-esteem. Just ask yourself for a moment, what is the value of life in Cameroon? You see that the value that is attached to the life of young people in Cameroon gives them that impression that their lives don't really matter the way it's supposed to be. So all this plays in the psychology of the young child back home, that well, my life does not really count, so I can actually be able to do all that I want to do with my body without paying close attention to the consequences. So from the educational perspective, considering the society as a wider school which helps in the molding of the behavior of young people, I want to believe that those signals that the elderly persons leave in society is one of those things that educate the children, and it's contributing to the consequences that we all see. On the other hand, too, if you look at the quality of the media, I remember very vividly when we were growing up, certain programs were not available to certain persons of certain ages. Unfortunately, with the coming of social media, with the coming of with the rapid growth in technology, in communication technology, certain contents have become very accessible to persons of certain ages. So control becomes a little bit a challenge. So all these things form part of the environment in which the young Cameroonian grows. So as a result of that, there is the possibility, or there is a tendency, or there is always going to be that which reflects in the behavior of the child. However, all is not lost. There are still possibilities where parents can begin to take responsibility. Societies, communities can actually begin to take responsibility to see that such behavior, such content, such moral standards are maintained. You see, the easiest way to colonize a person or to colonize a people is to destroy their value systems. Do our laws, do our local laws, do they uphold the value systems that our parents actually grew up with?
Okay.
Because when once the value system
Doctor. Yeah,
destroyed,
Doctor. We're going to be coming. Yeah, we are going to be coming back to you. Apostle Ambe Valentine Ngwa. When we observe very closely, we see that this immorality is coming from the elderly. How do we explain that the young man and young girl is looking up to their parents, and surprisingly this is coming from them. What would account for that?
Mr. Leo, the roots, I'm going to be giving a lot of factors today that contribute to the rise of moral decadence in our society, but I'm going to be dealing with the primary reason why we find ourselves where we are today. The moment this nation despised the place of moral education in our institutions, that was the beginning of the rise of all kinds of atrocities. We grew in schools in those days. You used to hear of Bible clubs. Children grew under Bible clubs. Most of the young men who gave their life to Christ and who grew in the fear of God, most of them stumbled across Jesus in schools. When the idea came where Bible clubs were closed down from schools, look at what we are having today. Not just moral decadence in the area of immorality or sexual abuse, but because we have produced a lot of rebels in many areas of life. A subject like religion, which in all religions I believe there's a certain level of morale. Religion is considered a trash in this nation. It's considered a subject that cannot make you fit in the midst of those who are qualified. When you score 2 A-levels today with religion in addition, they will say that you did not pass very well. To them, it's not a subject matter. While religion in Nigeria, people do it as a course at the university and come out with first-class degree. When we attach academics without morality, we are going to be raising intelligent thieves, intelligent prostitutes, intelligent criminals. And if at all we do not go back to the root and trace where we missed it as a nation, I'm telling you, we are going to be suffering a lot of casualties in the nearby future. In a place like America, there was a time a certain government came into power and fought against the teaching of Bibles in schools, the teaching of the Word of God in schools. And because of that, a lot of children were born out of that season who carried guns and they were shooting people. Things like lesbianism amplified, homosexualism increased because there were no moral values instilled in the hearts of children. The Bible says in Proverbs 22 verse 6, train up a child the way he should grow, so that when they grow, they will not depart from it. Where did Cameroon as a nation miss it to have what we are having today? It goes back to the system of education we have in this country. We have placed value on other subjects that build our minds and refuse to place value on the subject that builds our character. We have placed value on subjects that make us become engineers, doctors, lawyers, and pilots. We have debunked or minimized a place of subjects that can build children to good citizens in the country. Until we respect the place of moral education in our institutions back and it's established, we are going to be suffering a lot of casualties. Yeah, I am saying this.
Yeah, you are talking about bringing up the child, but the person who is supposed to bring up the child, himself is also caught in the web. Where did they go wrong?
The child of yesterday is the father of today. The child of yesterday, the child that was not properly brought up yesterday, is the father of today. And if you are a leader because you are trailing the way and directing the path, it is obvious that children can grow around you and pick up the same spirit. I grew up and I was smoking cigarettes, not because I saw cigarette for somebody else. I saw it from my father. Every time he sent me to go and buy a cigarette, I will buy the cigarette and I will give him. Once he smokes and drops the part of the cigarette, when he goes, I will pick it. Even if there's no fire there, I'll put it. He was mentoring me, discipling me, and nurturing me unconsciously. Whether we are aware or not, we are mentoring people consciously or unconsciously. And these are things we do not take into serious consideration. That's why I've said, and I'm still going back to the roots, when we lose the place of moral education in our institutions in this country, where we began looking religion as a subject whereby people are treating as a matter of fact, you have faith in life to practice religion. Religion is supposed to be a core subject in our school to build the morals of the people. Because no matter how academically sound you are, if you lack moral, you lack character, you lack integrity, you are a very intelligent criminal. And having an intelligent criminal will not take us anywhere. And that is the reason why we are talking about the place of moral education. And the parents who were those children yesterday that have grown up to be something else today. Like what Dr. Tata said, we are in a digital age. Information that were private, that were secretive in those days, are exposed today. You open a social media platform, little girls of 14, 13 years, they are there. They see all kinds of porn movies and all kinds of sarcastic informations. They are entering into the hearts of children who are not able to manage it. A car is a failure to a newborn baby. There's a success to an adult. Breast milk is a success to a child, while it's a failure to an adult. So what can be your success can be my failure. We can manage some contents on social media, we can manage some information on social media, but children at that level cannot also manage this information. And also televisions are almost becoming a platform whereby everything immoral is sold. They advertise cars, is ladies with string pants, ladies with bras naked, and they advertise one toothpaste, something must attach, they advertise pizza, and some more immoral aspect must be attached because they believe such seductive appearances are the things that are being used to attract individuals to watch programs on television. So I think that we should get back to the roots and start planting a seed of moral integrity. I remember in those days, most children who were in Bible clubs in school were very reserved. They were very organized, they were very decent. As a matter of fact, they followed some of us and told us that the life you are living is not good. Most preachers you see today were born out of Bible clubs in schools. And I have, as a young preacher, I grew up, I began preaching in all institutions, young men, and began imparting them. Most of them today, some are pastors, some are in different fields, but they fear the Lord. So I think that immorality, the rise of it, is when the government of this country began playing low on moral education as far as our curriculum is concerned.
Okay. The elders themselves, can we say that they are a failure when we look at sexual immorality? Because we see that many young persons are into it, but they are doing it not amongst themselves, with elderly persons, and most of them are approached to engage in this by elderly persons.
Mr. Leo, the fact that an individual is of age does not make the person elderly. Elderliness is not the age. Elderliness is based on maturity. And to be mature is not an issue of the number of years that you have lived on earth. And that's one of the reasons why today you might see somebody who is of 70 years old but living a life of a 16-year-old child. And those are some of the things that we must necessarily begin by correcting before we actually talk about elderliness. Mr. Leo, I want to go back to mention something that Apostle Ambe actually said. I want to put it in another word. When you read the scriptures, the Bible says that you should raise up a child in a way when he grows, he will not depart from it. When you look at that particular word, in the Hebrew context of it, it does not say you should raise the child. Say, if you have to raise a child, you need to raise yourself. So you are the beginning of it. So you must take the content of what you need to give the child first. And you know, if you have to follow it that way, means I begin with myself before I get to the child. So I cannot give a child what I do not have. And if you follow it, you come back to discover psychologically, in psychology, we have been made to understand that children actually learn through a process called psychosis. Psychosis is a process where a child observes for between the age of 0 up to the age of 7. A child learns through psychosis. The child uses his eyes to observe everything he sees that the parents are doing in the family. He does what he sees that people are doing in the community. He or she comes and does the same. So they are mimicking people. So if we have to look at it, I also want to point something. The fact that today you see naked pictures, it is not the nakedness that is the problem. It is the content. In fact, the values that are attached to that nakedness. Why? Because before in Africa, you could see people walk naked with breasts open. But it had no negative impact on the community. What has happened now that this nakedness has been transformed? It is based on the kind of cultural values that have been transferred to the people. And these cultural values have made people to see what they could not see before in the very images that they were seeing before. And so we have been able to, in fact, our communities have been enculturized to hold wrong ideologies concerning what was correct before. Today we have a problem with somebody walking with breasts open, which in the days of our ancient fathers, you could walk with breast and nothing will happen. Nobody sees it as a problem. People who walk with just what they call Ngwa, it will mean nothing. But today, it is a problem simply because of the value content. So, we have been enculturized to see ourselves from a Western prism. And so, that is where the problem. And those elders that we question about, Mr. Leo, the people who are presently claiming to be elders of our community today are completely brainwashed. They are wayward and unable to educate our very community to an extent where we are now experiencing whatsoever we are experiencing in our community. We cannot be talking of elders who are the same persons who want to take a child. You cannot imagine a person of 45, 50 who want to take a child of 16 years to sleep with. And you ask them, what do you benefit from it? They can't explain. The kind of information that they give these children, they fail to understand that when you plant it into their minds, they are registering it. Look at the things children, some parents do at home, the way they behave with their own wives in front of their kids. You do not know what you are planting in the mind of that child. And so when these children keep looking and observing, when they grow up, what do you expect? They will want to practice what they learned. You see, Mr. Leo, we grew up in a community where we did not see, in fact, I'll talk about me because I actually grew in a community. I didn't see anything wrong with me walking naked on the streets, even at the age of 12. It was not a problem. But today you see a little child of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, you are coming in, they are hiding their nakedness. What is wrong? Something is wrong somewhere. They have communicated to them that your nakedness is a taboo.
They now know, they have the knowledge of good and evil.
The knowledge of good and evil. So in relation to that, Mr. Leo, the problem is based on the content of what they receive, the value.
The value that is placed.
Yes. Not the
Emmanuel, are you also very disturbed that this is happening also in our schools? That is centers that are considered Reformation centers, centers that are described as centers of excellence, where the best minds are supposed to are expected to be produced from birth. More and more we have these porn videos, very disturbing videos emanating from these structures.
Yes,
you
indeed.
Yes, you
indeed.
are.
You see, if I'm not disturbed, then something should be very much wrong with me. A very big thing should be wrong with me. Since you have asked it from the academic perspective, let me quote Aristotle. Educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. These are wise people whom in their era foresaw things before our generations. Let me limit myself to the context of Cameroon. But before I limit myself to the context of Cameroon, you need to know that the Western influence, has killed the African values. African values, as we grew up seeing them and heard from those who were elderly to us, were those values that the father and the mother was talking to the child directly to the heart and not to the mind. This heart-to-heart talking was mostly done through short tales in the evening. And this was an opportunity for the parents to be very close to the children, observe the children, read the character of the children, and know how to adjust it. But you bear with me that today it has all disappeared because parents have abandoned their role. So I want to share the responsibility here. You see, the parents have a role to play. The school has a role to play. And then the state has a role to play. But unfortunately, we are caught in a situation where almost all the three factions have failed. Parents no longer have time to communicate rightly with their kids at home because they are chasing money. They want to amass more wealth. Teachers in school have fallen victims of the perpetrators of immorality. Without citing the name of a school, I know of a school where a child was writing probatoire, and after writing, that was 3 weeks ago, she ended up in the teacher's house that was invigilating them in that probatoire. What a pity. And let me recall to you very quickly that last year an SDO died on a youth in a hotel in the West. That is somebody who is supposed to be an epitome of respect in the community. Then what do you make of it when the corpse of an SDO is being removed from a hotel? Not that he was being shot, but because he died on top of a young lady. It's a taboo. And we all know, Mr. Liu, we will say that science cannot prove it. But I want to say that we know of state officials in this country who are involved in such occultic practices that has got to do with sex because of extra power that they need.
You are talking very little about the school.
No, I'm coming. That's my milieu.
Yes.
I have already mentioned in the school milieu.
Because some other person is going to be discussing about what you're wanting to talk about now.
Let me discuss about the school milieu. Yeah. You see, their sex education was supposed to have been taught. But the sex education is rarely taught. But let me be honest with you. In many schools, if you are teaching biology, for example, there is a topic called reproduction. In this topic of reproduction, when you go to any secondary school, you see the science, the biology department, there's always a problem. It is either the principal has to step in so that it is taught well, or it is always almost abandoned. It is done passively.
Yeah,
but then that could not. That one is creating awareness. That one is not directly linked to morality or to immorality. But the immoral part of it is that some teachers have made themselves equal to the students. They share funny videos and funny messages on WhatsApp. So that is, some of them take it as a way to lure these young girls to come, which of course is not hidden. That is why you see that even the teacher-student respect in the society today is degrading. A child walks into the bar, into the nightclub with the teacher. A child walks half naked with the teacher. A child comes to school poorly dressed, and you hear a teacher say you look sexy, which of course is very poor, Mr. Liu. I know of a policewoman whom I called to order when she appreciated the child, calling the child to a dress sexy. Because when we are talking about this thing, Mr. Liu, somebody should not quote me that I am biased. If you look at the level of immorality in the Francophone zone, it is not the same in the Anglophone zone. Because in the French zone, they so much believe in what they call fashion. And because of this fashion, some of these parents actually remove lump sums of money, assist these children to buy this kind of sexy dresses so that they do competitions during their birthday parties in the quarter or whatsoever. So it's regrettable because, like I said, even the role of the church, Mr. Liu.
No, we are going to talk about the role of the church. I've asked you about schools. You want to talk about church? You want to talk about...
No, we are talking about a topic that concerns the entire community.
But you were asked a question on schools. But let me get to Dr. Tata. Dr. Tata, are you also concerned with what is happening in our schools? These are centers that are described by many as centers of excellence, formation grounds for future leaders. But unfortunately, many very wrong things are happening within this milieu, with also funny videos, funny stories between teacher, student fighting over their
Yeah, Leo, thank you very much. I mean, you have said it. You have said quite a lot about that. I mean, a lot has been said about the impact of our schools, but I'm just going to add a little more. That you see, I generally define society as a school, because a school is not actually limited to a building or to an estate where human beings are placed into it for their behaviors to be impacted, and things like that. Society as a whole forms the learning environment. School is a learning environment. It's an environment that has the tendency where the human being receives signals. From those signals are expected to impact the behavioral change of that individual. So a society as a whole is actually a school. If you look at what our young people learn from the environment, which is a school I define in this context, you would realize that it's not always gone with the right judgments. It looks as though we are desiring for something else and educating our children with something else. Take a typical example, our music industry. We know that, of course, there are institutions, educational institutions, that provide music education. Now ask yourself the question, the music education that our schools teach, is it the same as the music that we listen to in town? If you look at the music industry, who are those who win the awards? What example do they put out there in society? We all know, without calling the names being promoted.
But there are people who are trained to teach. You will not tell me that the responsibility that is placed upon Apostle Ambe as a man of God is that which is placed on you also. There are people who went to school, the government spent billions to train them because they are expected to reform, to reshape, impact knowledge and a way of life to these children. Are you minimizing that fact? Were they trained only to teach biology, physics, and not the wholeness of the child?
Yeah, I mean, you are very right by that. Of course, there are individuals who have been professionalized to impact certain behavioral changes in our young people. But you realize that, and that's where we have a conflict. And that's why I started by saying that, what do we teach in the schools and what does society award? Because if we teach culture in our schools, and if we teach good music, if we educate our children about the talent which is found in the music industry, and the society awards people who appear on stage naked, you realize that there is going to be a conflict in the mind of the learner between what he or she learns in school and what society awards. Look at what the books we read. The books we read are mostly foreign cultures, and this westernization of our educational system is one of those things that has actually brought a lot of insanity in the way and confusion, I must say. Because you see, when a child learns something in school and the child sees that what he or she is learning in school is not in synchrony with what he has.
But is this not also amplified? Is this not amplified? We know that the Bible tells us that ye are in the world, but you are not of the world, which means that there is a reality of the world. There is also a reality of the kingdom of God. We are talking about the reality of the formulation, the molding of a mindset. We are talking about teaching. the formation of a person. Are you saying that if the society is bad and the teacher amplifies this, you blame it on the society? Should the teacher, at least that is teaching this child, not supposed to be that moral mentor to these children? Are you minimizing the fact that teachers should be having affairs with their students?
You see, the thing is, how long does a child spend in class, and how long does a child spend in a society or in a community? If you look at the length of time that children spend in school and the length of time that they spend in the community as a whole, you can deduce from there which of these two times can have a greater impact on the behavioral patterns of the child. So in this context, let me just close up by saying that we cannot ignore the economic or the state of poverty of
Doctor, we are going to be coming to that.
Okay.
We are going to be coming to that. But Apostle Ambe, Valentine, Ngwa, seemingly it is okay for teachers to go out with students, that is formalizing these activities, like he said earlier on. I'm talking about Emmanuel, that you see students, teachers fighting, teachers texting, inducing. That is, the society actually has induced many young people into immorality. But when you find teachers themselves actually teaching the art of immorality, and don't you think that either at the level of the ministry or at some level they should place some restrictions that if you are caught doing that, you are sanctioned?
Schools have disciplinary council for children except the one for teachers. Teachers have been made as lords and demigods in institutions. They have the right and all the effrontery to discipline students, but there is no law guiding any institution that brings teachers to book. There is definitely supposed to be a rule of engagement that has to bring teachers who carry out such atrocious activities in school campus. They must be brought to book. In any nation that does not have guiding principles and disciplinary rules, that nation will be left in the hand of total confusion. What we are seeing today is that our schools have teachers that can discipline children, and the teachers do not have anybody that can discipline them. People supposed to be fired out of duty, transferred to remote environments if such scandals are caught. But you see even videos circulate and the teacher, nothing is mentioned. It would appear they are afraid to even touch the teachers, or better still discipline them. That is where we are missing it, because no matter how much we engage into prayer, there is a place of discipline. There is a place of discipline that cannot be denied. It cannot be denied. We keep on saying that we should not spare the rod and spoil the child. There are also teachers who are children, even though they have the title as teachers. Because like Prof said here, maturity has to do with someone's mentality. It has nothing to do with your age. A teacher who is going out with a student, going out with pupils. I've seen even teachers in primary school going out with pupils in class. How do you start to educate that kind of child? It's pedophile. It's pedophile. You have access to children who are sitting in class 5, class 4, and you are messing them up. You in a secondary school, you are a teacher. Your own is to chase students, to the extent whereby in universities, if you don't sleep with professors and lecturers, they don't even give you marks. They will make you fail their courses. Teachers will make you repeat classes in school, and because of intimidation and all kinds of fear, girl children are forced to give their bodies freely to men who will mess them up because they want to pass to the next class. That's why we have degree holders in our country today who cannot defend a degree because they did not get the degree with their mind, they got it with their private parts. Total decadence and moral disgrace in the society, because we have now gone to the extent whereby people are at a point where they are at gunpoint to surrender their body. Sometimes you are even intelligent, they don't even give you the opportunity to pass, because why? You don't pass anymore with your brain. You pass with your buttocks, you pass with your private parts, you pass with your breasts. That is not education anymore. So I think we should get to a point whereby we don't only discipline students and pupils in school, we should set rules of engagement that also deal with these teachers who are the one promulgating and promoting all this rubbish in schools. I think the parliament even has to sit and draft rules and discipline to set in place to bring teachers to book. Because I don't see how a child will go to school, a teacher intimidates. If somebody says you will not go to Form 4, you will not go to Form 4. Your destiny is in the hand of a man whose interest is to make sure he abuses your body, and some of them are already married. They are not making love to you to get married to you. They just want to use you and dump you. The worst in the universities. I have had so many university students come to me and complain how lecturers will want to have their way with them before they give them a pass. Why? What kind of society are we building? So I think we have to get to the place where teachers, like Ndiwum sitting here, who is also a teacher, should preach better messages on those teachers who are abusing the dignity and the respect of the teaching office.
They're beating around the office, the bush.
Around the bush, a bit around the bush. What is the Minister of Secondary Education doing? These are even issues that are supposed to be discussed in the parliament. When these things reoccur over and over, we just had a session. These are issues that are supposed to go to the parliament and rules set into place. If a teacher is called 1, 2, 3 teachers as sample, the rest will take their stand. Because they have told us that do not spread the spoil nature, which means it's not only prayer that changes people. Discipline has to change people. They have to put very stringent laws and hard disciplines on people who are carrying out such activities. If not so, we are going to be dancing. Except the people who are also supposed to be disciplined. Nari agents they are also victims of the same crime.
Okay. Good evening. Oops. Message. Good evening to you, Mr. Liu and co-panelists. Sexual immorality on the rise in Cameroon is as a result of parents failing in their responsibility for children's upbringing. Some parents don't monitor the daily activities of their children, and worst of it is a TV set in the house. Children watch programs which are not of their interest, and parents don't monitor these activities. Parents should have the remote control in their keeping and to determine what the children should watch. Okay. Aga Clavets is writing from Kumba. Good evening, Mr. Liu and all the panelists. I love your program. It is very educative. I know a teacher who slept with 8 Form 1 students. I am Ken Fak Cindy from Kumba. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Sexual immorality can only be reduced if churches are spread all over. These are one of the places where moral education and consciences of living a righteous life is being taught. Most politicians condemn churches, yet they expect things to go well in the society. Agbotambe writing from Douala. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Special thanks to Apostle Ambe. Your place, day, I owe you one man. Okay, I am okay. Good evening to you. Good evening, Mr. Liu. It's Dominique in Yaoundé. Our elderly people are responsible for these sexual activities in our schools. They flatter our little girls with huge sums of money and big phones just to sleep with them. Imagine an elder giving 20,000 francs to a girl while their parents give only 500 francs. Yes, the elderly are actually, it is true that they exploit these young girls who are also desperate, who are poor.
Yes, Mr. Liu, we have a problem with an elderly population that has been miseducated and misinculturated to an extent where they are now living less than animals instead of living like humans. You know, there is one thing that a lot of people do not hold to mind. When you come to look at the African way of life and culture, you could not be considered a man simply because, a mature person simply because you had age. You could not be considered an elder simply because you had age. You must have proved your humanity to the entire village community that you are indeed qualified to be an elder before you could be brought into that class of an elderly person. And the African culture was made in a way where you prove your manliness and humanity differently from being a child. You had to prove it. But if you look at it today, we have babies who are of age. We call them elderly people, not because they are elderly. They have put on age, but the infant in them did not mature. And so this infant will want to still keep on thinking that I am still that baby. And that is why their choice of might be ladies that they want to take or the young boys that they want to pick are far below their age. And when you see people like this, it proves to you that if you have to go back to the African culture, they are not qualified to be called elders. Why? They have not been able to live up to the standard of being an elder. So it is a display of value content that determines elderliness, not age. And these persons lack it all completely. I mean, in this nation of Cameroon, if you have to look from top to down, you will be frightened with the kind of activities that take place during the day and during the night, simply because of the high level of moral decadence that had been inculcated in our people from school level. Like I said earlier, Mr. Leo, just imagine you are a child growing up in a home and you believe that your parents are elders, but they are babies. They keep on doing the things that you at that age are supposed to be doing. And as a baby, as a child, you start copying, because children, as I said earlier, do learn through synopsis. They begin to observe, and when they observe, they practice. When they are growing, they will start repeating the same things. As they keep on repeating, it becomes a habit. And if they grow with that habit, you will call them tomorrow that they are elders, but they have a habit that they learned when they were kids that did not depart from them, and that habit keeps on with them in their old age. And so, Mr. Leo, we have a problem where the problem is not outside, the problem is inside. We have an internal problem which needs to be corrected. There is a problem of moral decadence right within individuals.
At old age, should we correct it at old age?
It should be corrected. At any age you can correct the problem. There is no particular age which a problem can be corrected. And you see, with the fact that we live with these persons whom we are calling elders, you do not expect that the Cameroon society should be advanced. The Cameroon society will end up being a society where people live practically, you want to see people walk naked. Somebody mentioned something earlier. There's one elder, people consider him to be an elder in the music dimension, because he sat and thought that maybe the Europeans are doing things like this, other nations are doing things like this, and they are being rewarded. If I have to be rewarded, I need to jump out naked. He unclothed himself, went on and sang. That created the boom that he needed and gave opportunity. And many young people have copied that. When you copy it, what are you doing? And you see, today it has become normal that people should walk naked, that people should do those things, and even put them on video and send them on social media. So the idea of nakedness, Mr. Leo, and moral decadence, we should not talk about elders. We should look at maturity, because most of them are not mature.
Most of them are not mature. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and great panelists. This is a very sensitive topic, and I enjoy it very well. The Western world has completely eradicated all the good morals in Africa. They do sample, and we Africans complete the process. These two, times two. Even in the days of slave trade, one could see people naked, but you can't see their private part. Even without cloth, they still manage to use their hands to cover their private parts. Today we have access to clothes, but can't put them on. Talking about string pants, what can come out from the devil? Check on those who put on strings pants, then you will know their moral behavior. All in all, the government of Cameroon can't escape from the table of contributors of show moral in the English parts of Cameroon. This level of immorality gushed at the outbreak of the crisis. My regards to all the guests on board. I don't know where that study was done. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Sexual immorality should be condemned by all. I have a worry when your panelists lampoon this act only in the school milieu, forgetting other institutions like the church, offices, etc. I say so because your topic talks of sexual immorality in Cameroon, not in schools. Eno Mulu Bath is writing from Bamenda. Yes, but the school should be exemplary. If it is happening in the military corps, if it is happening in the post office, if it is happening in other places, the school should stand tall. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and you all in the studio. I think Cameroon need moral education from primary schools right up to university, or better still, religion teaching from primary to university, where the fear of God will be taught. It's Elvis Brown writing from Shell, New Bell. Yes, but all of these people go to church, so I don't know. Good evening, sir. I know a school in Douala which I attended where every male teacher makes sure he sleeps with at least a student in that school, not minding the class and age of students. Okay, something needs to be done. Eh? Good evening. I think we are going to do 5 programs on this teacher-student relationship. Good evening, Mr. Liu and Mr. Ndiwum. You will be there to discuss. Yes. Good evening, Mr. Liu. This can only be reduced through our parents at home, because you cannot imagine your father refused you should not smoke and he sends you every day to buy cigarettes for him. Thanks. Magife Serge from 3 Corners, Bikondo. Good evening to you. This one says, no. We can only encourage people to good character. Michelson from Yaoundé says, good evening, Mr. Liu. This problem of sexual immorality is all around. It is even sure that ministers in Yaoundé are the ones controlling, okay, in Yaoundé, Minifem in Yaoundé. They don't go out during the day to check what the Cameroonian people are going through, but they only go out to have sex with those girls in the night. They have hands inside this matter, okay? Michelson, yes. Do your best and let the government do it. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu and the panelists. The teacher-student relationship is sickening. My religion study teacher used to ask girls out with the saying that he is a religion studies teacher and not a man of God. Lister Montana is writing from Yaoundé. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Sexual immorality can only be reduced if churches are spread all over. I think I got that already. Good evening. Your program is indeed very wonderful. We wonder the place of English language in our country. This is because of the new timetable of the primary school, in which we see oral expression and handwriting without the main language, English language, but there is a French language. Maybe oral expression and handwriting is English language. If yes, good, but if no, then where are we heading? Paddy is writing from Manjo. Good evening, Mr. Liu and the panelists. Despite the fact that some teachers date around with their students, I would also like to lay emphasis on this aspect, whereby some parents tend to blame threatened teachers when certain topics are being taught in schools. Okay, someone just wrote from okay, immorality is part of a school like my secondary school, without mentioning the name, had the entire staff, both men and auxiliary, dating students, with principals saying they need date ugly girls. Then can someone tell me how we will have a society with good moral standards? Mokom Cyrus is writing from Santa. You see, many persons are, there are people who are saying, yes, no, there are people who are
confirming.
Yes, they're sharing their experience.
Okay, Mr. Liu, like I said a while ago, it's good that.
Why do you people say it's fringe benefit?
No,
some of you people.
No, Mr. Liu. Every statistics have proven that if you walk the streets of Douala in the morning, you count the number of girls that are half naked. You go to Commercial Avenue in Bamenda, you won't see the same thing. Let me take a very local example.
That's not my question to you, please.
What are you saying?
I'm not talking about don't polarize people, please. You want to
maybe I did not get your question.
No, I'm saying that
yes,
most messages are saying that this person is writing from Santa. Yeah. Santa is in the northwest.
Sure.
That in his school, almost every teacher and auxiliary staff is dating. The another person has written from Kumba, citing a teacher, religious teacher, who says, "Don't call me man of God." And there are many persons who are writing from the northwest and south, and they are saying this is what is happening. What are you saying that Douala and Bamenda?
Anyway, what I was saying, if you look at it from the sociological standpoint,
answer my question.
It will hold. I'm coming to your question.
Okay, yeah.
So I want to tell you that it will hold, whether you like it or not. Now, what I'm saying, coming back to your question, it has been established that all their observations are 80% or 85% right. Because in some schools, some girls don't even pay school fee if they accept the proposal of the principals and the bosses. This one is true. It's very clear. Now, but to tag the school as if it is just the sole milieu where this kind of activity is taking place, I try to distance myself again, because take for example, you know, couples are supposed to show love to each other, but some couples misinterpret it by thinking that even in front of their children they can kiss their wife, they can kiss their husband. And you know that the first step of learning, which is informal, begins from home before the formal, which is the school. So we cannot lose sight of the fact that the home, which is the genesis of which the primary source of learning, Mr. Leo, we cannot only hamper on school. School is coming second. We are only blaming school because there are people who have been trained in this domain to handle, to mold up the young minds, and they have been failing. That's what we should accept. Now we also have, just take the example of a father whose daughter got up one morning and asked him food money, and the reply was that, "Get out of my room. Your mother did not reply. Did not reply to me last night." Well, and the child was going to school laughing, sharing it with his peers. You see that the parents have a role to play, because from the time you turn, just take for example, you come into the parlor, you see your dad, your mom, all of them half naked, play a type. You know that children like to experiment what they see with their eyes. So that's the role of the home. Now we also have the peer influence. Peer influence is very important, because this WhatsApp, the television, like Apostle Ambe was saying, when they see it, when they sit in their groups, in their peer groupings, they try to experiment, like the videos that went viral in one school in Kongsamba 3 weeks ago. Children were kissing, others were taking pictures. When they finish taking pictures, they go into the kissing experiment, and then those who were on the act, they come and take the camera. So it is something that needs to be tackled from all angles, Mr. Leo. Despite the fact that the school happened to be a milieu where we would have expected better results. But then, when we are talking about school and we just generalize it, we penalize some people for nothing. We have government schools, we have mission schools. In some mission schools, like in St. Bede's College, without publicity, if a child is caught in an act of immorality, you have a good idea of that institution, that child is dismissed. But that will not be the case in the government school, because in the government school they will need to take procedures upon procedures, and at the end of the day the parents can pass behind and lobby, and such a child remains in the school milieu with such an attitude, and it continues to influence other children. So the house, peer groupings, and the society, they have to sit up collectively. Okay,
good evening, Mr. Liu. This issue of teachers and students relationship is really disgusting. I don't appreciate it, because some students dating teachers take it as an advantage to disrespect other lecturers simply because she has an affair with another teacher or lecturer. On the other hand, some lecturers threaten them by saying, "You will never validate my course if you don't accept my proposal." Ebek Favor is writing from Douala. We are going back in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah. The world is coming to an end. We can't stop it now. We can only control it. We have a problem of maturity. Doggy is writing from Ndobo here in Douala. Abunaberi. Good evening, Mr. Liu. From the time corporal punishment was prohibited and some teachers maltreated by some uniform influential parents, most teachers and pupils, students have become wayward. Again, some persons are actually in the teaching field, not for inculcating knowledge or morals, but for the income they get. Most of them don't even have the moral values themselves. El Donatus Ndo, writing from Buddha. Ngwa, writing from Boya, says, good evening, Mr. Kum. Patrick, watching from Moliko Boya. Thanks for the wonderful program. Home training has failed. The youth schools have failed. Churches have failed. And the government has failed. We must educate the public on indecent dressing because all eyes are open to the west. Okay, to copy Europe. Okay, to the west. To copy Europe and paste in Africa negative things in Africa. The government must put serious sanctions against teachers' student immoral acts. For teachers' salaries should be suspended for some months, and the students who are accomplices must also be sanctioned heavily. Greetings to you all in the studio. This one says, good evening, Mr. Liu. I personally believe that the rise to these immoral acts in schools today is because of the pattern of dressing in most of our schools today, and most especially now that Southwest and Northwest don't wear uniform. They tend to compare dresses, and by this they do immoral acts just to have money to buy dresses and to look good, caring not about their dignity. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I think the problem should be the girls, cause they all know that what is good and what is bad. It's fine, writing from Yaoundé. Now, Dr. Tata, many persons are also pointing a finger at parents who are not doing their jobs at home. Many have very little time to monitor and control what their children are doing.
Yes, Brolio, you see, as one of the panelists indicated much earlier, that our children are exposed to content. Generally, they are exposed to content that they're not supposed to be exposed. I even wonder how many parents know about parental control on their television or their decoders or their mobile phones and all that. So all devices are designed with these things in mind. So if a parent decides to buy a mobile phone for the child, if a parent decides to buy to own a decoder for the children to access television, satellite television, digital satellite television, so these things have parental control settings on them. So maybe before parents buy some of those things, they should acquaint themselves with the parental control settings, so that should they allow the children to access these devices at home without their presence, the children will not be able to access certain content that will jeopardize or give them certain negative education. Of course, you know, as we've all been talking about the education part of it, you see that our schools are expected to prepare children for society. And when whatever goes on in school is actually controlled by what happens in society. You see, children, there's this popular word, cool. You know, a teacher will want to be a cool teacher to the students. So the teacher will always want to relate what he's doing with what is acceptable in society. And that's why I always try to bond these two together. You know, generally in Cameroon, we should try as much as possible to marry our industry, our society with our educational institutions, because any society that marries the two, you realize that the change that takes place in school will follow suit in the society. But if you dissociate the two, if industry or if society is dissociated from our educational institution, then the impact that our educational institution are expected to have in society will not be felt. You realize that people might be teaching something in school, meanwhile society is practicing something else. Let's, for example, just look at what our parents, because the question is actually directed to parents, what do parents define beauty to their children? When you find a parent a lady, for example, just as an example, goes to buy mesh, well, once you start buying foreign hairs to put on your head, your child starts seeing that he or she can only be beautiful when he or she has an attachment. So that self-esteem, that confidence about her own hair is you are losing, the child is losing that So when the child grows up, the child only believes that he or she can only look good or be considered to be beautiful when he or she does X or Y thing. And even our dress codes, what is society awarding? If you look at some of the beauty contests that we all watch on media these days, you realize that they award just the negative qualities. So this question of the moral decay in our society, and Cameroon being the particular case here, is because of the decay in our value systems. What does society award? I indicated much earlier about our music industry. It's not limited to that. The movie industry, what is society awarding? Because education will be impacted very grossly by those things that society awards. Why? Because society or educational institutions are designed to prepare the child, the learner, into society. So teachers will want to be good teachers. Is the teacher who will prepare the child squarely for society. Sometimes you would realize that a child will learn certain positive values. I mean, we have mission schools that are doing extremely well. The child will learn positive values from school. And when the child gets into society, those values will be at a serious conflict with what is happening to society, in such a way that the child is even going to be in a state of confusion, whether to uphold the values as learned in school or
okay, doctor,
to follow what society says.
Okay, yeah. Apostle Ambe Valentine Ngwa, I want us to look at what parents ought to do, because you live with your child, you think that you love them, whatever they desire and ask for, you give them. You would not even want to care to know what they are watching in their rooms, who they interact with, and we even give them very little attention, just to discuss with them, so that you form part of their life, because there is completely that disconnect between parents and their children. Their children are living their lives and parents are going away, and the divide keeps going, and the child ends up in a different world.
Leo, that's a very, very serious issue. I'm talking here as a parent. My first child is a girl, she's 14, and I've said that none of them will have a mobile phone till they enter the university. It's a rule in my house, because when you give a leopard a handshake, they want an embracement. Sometimes it's good to avoid these things completely, rather than giving the children the opportunity to access it and then struggle to control, because there's a time you cannot control. My daughters have told them they will never have a telephone till they reach. I mean, not even the mobile, not even the Android, ordinary telephone. You don't have it. You will not have it till you enter the university, because there is an age. If you give a child an information that they cannot handle, they will abuse it. Many people grow old. They don't grow up. There's a difference between growing old and growing up. People can increase in age. It doesn't mean that they have grown up. Grown up has to do with maturity. There are a lot of parents who have grown old. They have not grown up. And if you don't know how to manage children, that's a very serious thing. There are supposed to be guiding principles in every house. Secondly, if you start seeing changes in your child, you don't wait, because they will never move close to you. It is your responsibility to psychologically observe a child and then pull them close. The next, we have to start teaching children sex education very early. Teaching them sex education is not exposing them to immorality, it's teaching them the dangers of having access to something that they are not mature. Some parents believe that by hiding everything concerning sex to a child, the child is going to grow better. It's a big lie. Bring your children to a place to understand that sex is good when you are married. Sex is good because it is for procreation. Sex is good because when it is held in sanctity and when it is held in sacredness. Sex is abused when it is like this. If you give them the right mindset about sex, they will not abuse it. I have said it and I'm still saying it over and over. There are so many things on earth we think that they are bad. They are not bad. It's the abnormal use of those things that are bad. Sex itself is not bad. When it is abnormally used out of context, that is bad. And so giving the child, or as a parent, giving your children the right sex education is what helps them navigate the circumstances and challenges of life. You cannot follow up a child everywhere, but an information you give to a child can mentor and guide a child everywhere the child goes. If you hide everything concerning sex to a child, the day someone else will introduce it to them, they might not teach them the right thing concerning the sex. There is a story of a particular driver who was driving a child to school every day, and the child kept asking the mama, what is sex? What is sex? And the mother said, sit quiet. Go and ask the father. The father said, sit quiet. And then the driver was carrying the child one day because the child was that kind of inquisitive in nature. He asked the driver, what is sex? The driver said, I will show you. But when I show you, don't tell your mother. Don't tell your father. He will carry that child on the way to school and will get the child well sexed. Because why? The person that introduced the information to the child was the wrong introducer. And this is where we have a trouble as parents. We don't go to educate children on some things. There are so many things on earth we have considered as evil. I have said that Indian hemp is not bad. The person that introduces you Indian hemp will either tell you if it is a medicinal plant or a drug to consume. Two persons holding the same material, one man gives you the wrong education, you use it abnormally, another person gives you the right education. There are people who know Indian hemp, they use it for their hair. It's a medicinal plant. Another person will tell you, write it on paper and smoke it. The difference is in the communication of that same thing. Abnormally using something is bad information behind it. Sex is not bad. Parents, when a child is, how old can a child start learning about sex? As the child clocks 10 years old. You must tell them things they ought not to do. My children, you cannot come to my house and my kids sit on your laps. It's impossible. No matter how sanctified, holy, organized a man may be, once he has a contact with the opposite sex, there's a reflection. There's a reaction. So avoid those things by telling kids that when don't sit on uncle's laps, don't nobody should come to the house and call them my wife. Stop it. Those things are like that. While you control your TV set in front of your children, there are times you will not be there. Fathers and mothers cannot be 24 hours available. The kids will put the TV in your absence. If you gave them the right information before your departure, they will rightly use it. So parents have a very huge responsibility in educating children. I saw a woman on television. She was teaching her children, my breasts, my buttocks, my part belongs to me. They are my private part. It became a song. The children thought about it, they grew. If you come to touch that kind of child's breast, he will sing that song to you. Uncle, my breasts, my buttocks, my pride to me. That is how you educate a child to avoid such things. Now, not that sex is bad. If a child gets married tomorrow, know that if you don't make love, you don't make sex, you will never give birth to children. Sex also is a means of satisfying your husband. When you communicate this thing properly, once they are face to face with that challenge, they used to say, in the absence of a teacher, the lecture becomes the guide. In the absence of the teacher, the lecture you've given to that child becomes the guide. In an examination room, we don't have teachers. We thrive on the lecture the teachers gave us months and sometimes years behind. Because in front of the examination paper, you are left to face destiny by yourself. You are there with what the teacher put in your mind, not the presence of the teacher. So parents should give the children sound education, not always being available. There is a story, and I conclude, of a particular career man and career woman. The man was a medical doctor, wife medical doctor. They would get up in the morning and go to work and leave the kids in the house. They had two children, a boy and a girl. They had a house boy, they had a house girl. Those house boy and house girl had their sexual rounds in front of those children and kept on playing pornography. If those children saw it, the boy began sleeping with the sister because why? He did not know that it was incest. Because incest is thoughts. For somebody to know you're not supposed to have access to your relative. This child and the brother became so much in love until the girl impregnated the brother impregnated the sister. They aborted it. Impregnated the second time, they aborted it. They impregnated the third time, they wanted to abort it, the child died. This boy own said his wife, not his sister, his wife is dead. And they will do everything possible to bring back his wife. He was talking to his parents about his own biological sister. Why? Nobody taught them that having sex as brothers and sisters is called in English language incest. It's an abuse to the institution, abuse to the romance, and abuse to the concept of sex. So I think the information we leave in the hearts and minds of our children become the guiding force that helps them in the face of temptations. Parents, listen to me and listen very well. In 24 hours of a day, teachers have approximately just 8 hours. If you leave the destiny of your children in the hand of a class teacher, then you are the dumbest of all parents.
Okay, we're talking about our parents, but in addition to just talking, parents need to make their children their friends, spend more time with their children, rather.
Yes, Leo, it is the responsibility of parents to actually make sure that their children become their close friends.
Yeah, because if you are not a friend to your child, the child will spend most of the time with, especially you don't know the friends of your children. They hang around with just anybody.
That's something that, in fact, speaking as a parent, I am one of those parents whom, as an individual, this is not boasting on TV. My kids, when you come back from school, I need to know everything that you have written, that they taught you in school. I get into your back, I need to talk with you, find out if you understood. So with all that, there are some parents who will not even want to know what the child was taught in school. In fact, not to talk of even checking what the child was taught in school. They don't care. They believe that the teacher has done the job. And you know, this is as a result of the whole idea of money today, where people think that money has become everything, where they abandon their own homes. Parents get up in the morning, the mother is going this way, the father is going this way. They don't care how the children live. I'll give you a short story. Mr. Leo, I remember when I was growing up, my mom had left home and I was with my father. When he leaves in the morning, by then I was in Form 1, and he's going to work. The best place that I'll find myself is in the nightclub. I mean the video club. So I go spend my time the whole day, watch my film. He was shocked when he came. It was Tatum. He went for report forms. In fact, because I didn't go, they called him to give it to him, and he discovered that for the whole term I did not come to school. So when he came back, he felt on me. The question, and I should ask such a parent, is why you were at work? Who do you think was taking care of your child? How was he going to school? Do you think that because you sent the child to school that's enough? No, that's not enough. That's not enough. You need to be able to make sure you follow up the child's life every day, every morning, every evening. You make sure the child goes to sleep on time. You see, I don't know why we copy only the wrong parts of the films we watch from Europe. You watch some films where European parents will sit down to come read stories to their children until they go to sleep. But the African parent does not do that. We do not have that time to make our own kids our own friends. You should make your children to feel you are absent. Where when you are not there, they should feel like, oh, where daddy is not there, why are you coming back? They should even pick a phone to call to find out. But today, when most parents are coming back, their children rush into hiding. That is the kind of way some of us grew. Where you think that your father is your enemy. And that is the kind of community in which we are grooming. Because I will say this, every community begins from a home. The way parents handle their kids will determine the way the community at large will become. If you impact the wrong ideas to children today, expect a very dangerous community tomorrow and society tomorrow. Just imagine, if not of the hand of God, some of us would have been thieves. Dangerous.
God forbid.
God forbid.
Thank God for
That's
grace.
just to say, when parents are absent, the community becomes the teacher. If you are not there, whatsoever comes before the child becomes the next teacher to teach the child.
When the mother hen is still around, anything could happen to the child.
So
okay.
that's the way the community ends up being.
Okay.
Very dangerous, like we have Cameroon today.
Okay, good to
Parents have failed, teachers have failed, government has failed. So who do you have to blame?
Good evening once more in the studio. I hail you, Apostle Ambe. You set my mind. Good evening to you too. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Some teachers come to school half naked, and such teachers are not respected because of it. Julius Peter is writing from Abonaberi. Good evening. to you all at the panel. There are reasons as to why some people engage in various acts of sexual immorality, one of which is a failure to set boundaries wherever one is involved in a caring relationship, such as the relationship which exists between a teacher and a student, a doctor and a patient, a counselor and a counselee, an employer and an employee, or a pastor and a congregate. It is particularly important that there should be boundaries. Ken is writing from Ambe. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Your programs, okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Your programs are always enriching. What I know is that the church is playing her role, but government and private schools lay very little or no attention to the decaying moral attitudes of the children. Religion is written at the GCE birth. The certificate is invalid when it comes to looking for a job in Cameroon. Charles is writing from Yaoundé. My point is this: a teacher who has been well trained to teach children on good morals aspects came and instead having an affair with them, then it's a call for concern. If the teacher is under PTA, let the school administration and the principal, who is highest authority, look into it. But if it's a government teacher, then the principal should notify his boss that the person you sent here to render his services is going out of line. In all, the Ministry of Education has to enforce its rules on teacher. The situation is very alarming. Okay. Tiku Felix, writing from Boya, says, good evening, Mr. Liu. The alarming rate of sexual immorality between teens and adults has been promoted or is being promoted by the following factors. Graduates need jobs, and now most of the graduates are teens. Adults are at the job offering positions, and is at it as an advantage to get desperate teens. Also, teens are in a deep competition amongst themselves, such that they go for sex with their eligible people who can put them in hero positions. They get those men who are adults seductively. Some parents push their children to sexual immorality based on desperation or competition. Tiku Felix from Boya, good evening to you. Tiku. Oops. Nope, this one. Good evening, Mr. Liu. This is a serious issue. You see nowadays, teachers now give marks to students in exchange of sex. Musa Peter is writing from Mora. Melvis, writing from Bafusam, says, good evening, Mr. Liu and your entire panel. The aspect of student-teacher relationship is really becoming unbearable. It's just as if it's a course which is being taught to them in the training school. Teacher will impregnate a Form 2 child and give her money to go and abort the child 2 consecutive times. It's really a disgrace, okay? Melvis from Bafusam, I'm sure she's talking out of experience. Stanley Bar from Kumba says, good evening, Mr. Liu and your members. I want to appreciate Apostle Ambe. He is really speaking the truth about tutors. Go back to the years of PSS Kumba with Sumbele of late. No tutor would talk to female students. Secondly, no moral education in school now. Let's pray, because our children are being dealt with by corruptors, by corrupt tutors. Bastan is writing from Kumba. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I do believe if we can look back to the yesteryears, we would see that our great-grandparents were free from all this sexual immorality. I believe with the coming of religion and civilization, where a woman was taught to be equal to the man, has also contributed to the depreciation of our cultural values, beliefs, and integrity. I don't want to write a long paragraph, but to just make it short, the women now have no respect for the elders, which is why they don't feel shy sleeping with them. Before then, when a man approached a young lady, the lady would report it to his parents, and there was a social disgrace, and so people were afraid of becoming socially disgraced. Okay, the message is long, though you wanted to put it short. Emmanuel Ndiwum. Teachers are greatly indexed here, but I want us to look away from the teaching core.
Let's
Let's look at the influence of churches to the situation. We see the implantation. Apostle Ambe, what's the problem? Okay, we are seeing the mushrooming of churches in almost every quarter, and many young people are in these churches, but the morality is in a sharp decline. How do we understand this, that churches are coming up every day, all the street corners, we are preaching hallelujah, like, is it the wrong message that is being preached, or the fact that Satan is so powerful that he's still taking people out?
Mr. Leo, to be honest with you, I'm one of the people who do not believe in the implantation of churches everywhere. Okay. Because not every church is a church. You know, we live in a world where church now is business. That one we should say it without fear of favor. And when you are doing business, you need more customers.
You're correct, Apostle. Apostle
is a business, is a church man. No, anyway,
he has a church.
No, I did not know. But I think that from the Apostle Ambe that I know, he should be able to make a difference. Apostle Ambe. But what I'm saying is that when you are a businessman, you only have a relationship between your business and your clients, your customers. So many of these people who go to these churches are customers to the church owners and their families. That one we should say it without fear of favor. Now you discover that even those who create these churches are not to preach the word of God. They are to preach miracles. They are not there to preach salvation any longer. They are there to preach miracles, preach immediate success. They are there to preach the message of success. If you come to my church, I pray for you, I anoint you, the wife that you did not have, the husband that you have been looking for, and you discover that at the end of the day, the church is jam-packed with young girls who are looking for husbands, some are looking for jobs, and at the end of the day, the man of God, in quote, I put it in quote because not everybody who says I'm a man of God is a man of God. He now has easy access to these young girls, and you will bear with me, Mr. Leo, that most of these men of God that I put in quote, they take these young girls as their food. I came across a situation of a pastor.
You are very free talking about them, but when I asked about teachers, you went round quoting other things.
No, Mr. Leo, I am the one who started telling you what happens in the teaching milieu. And before then, let me remind you that we should not sacrifice teachers. Teachers are not taught morality in school. They are taught ethics and deontology.
Okay.
Yes. So we should not only hammer on teachers. So when we are talking about it, I met a pastor who had made his house all the church girls that will come and clean the church on Saturday left from there, clean his house, wash his dresses, and then cook.
What is wrong in assisting a man of God?
And at the end of the day, they passed the night there, Mr. Leo. I want to quote a name here, Barrister Nico Hale. There's a lesson I learned from him. He said, if you're a man of God, before you go to the pulpit to preach, test the message you have to give to the people. The rest are sure that if you look at the people eyeball to eyeball, the message will not come back to you as a challenge. Until today, I've never forgotten this message. There are men of God that they can go into the church and they take the right side of the church, preach only on the right side till the end of the day, because their eyes are not courageous enough to go to another direction where they had committed terrible things with part of the congregation that is sitting there. This one is clear. It's not. So the church, like I said,
why are the Christians not receiving? Forget about what the man of God says or does. Why don't we receive the message and put it into practice? There are so many of them.
When a man of God tells you that, do what I say and don't do what I do.
Which man of God said that?
No, they have been saying, I must tell you. In a day last year, 6 women, unfortunately even married women, were impregnated by a man of God. Now must tell you. These are things that happen around us every day. We cannot say no to it. So,
Ndiwum,
by a man of God. Yes.
Ndiwum, I will have to come in.
So you
No,
you are not the moderator. You are not the moderator. So you have to
just land because
so we are
like
I said, Mr. Leo, it's a collective sexual immorality in a society is a collective failure.
Okay.
And it should be a collective responsibility to restitute the moral standard of the whole community. Because here we are not talking about student-teacher relationship. We are talking about something that holds true to almost adults.
Okay. Yes, Apostle, you have something from the womb?
Yeah, in the womb said, the man of God said, say what I say, I don't say what I do. It is in Matthew 23, beginning from verse 1. Then Jesus spake to the multitudes and to his disciples, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sat on Moses' seat. All things, therefore, whatever they tell you to observe, observe and do, but don't do their works. For they say and don't do. It is not an issue when you hear the right message. You have to do what the man of God is doing. The message is for everybody. The decision to do it is your choice. The man of God is not the way, the truth, and the life. The man of God is not the pathfinder. The man of God is not the word of God. So once you listen to God's word, practice what you listen and stop following somebody's life, because salvation is personal. Number two, Ndiwum, to clarify you, there are teachers in school who are teaching so many things that they are not doing. The children take those same things and do wonders with them. There are many teachers who have taught so many pupils and students, and they have become greater than those teachers by doing what they told them to do, and the teachers could not even do what they are teaching. So let us forget about the fact knowledge can come from every angle. It is your decision with what you hear that matters. So don't hold somebody responsible for your personal flaws because he is doing what you think is wrong. Let us stop this error of saying that because the pastor preached against immorality and you too also have to practice immorality. The pastor is not the word of God.
Likewise,
the pastor is not the way, the truth, and the life. The pastor is a messenger preaching God's word. All of us, you and the pastor, you are subject to that word. So obey what the word is saying and stop following the pastor's life. Who told that God will send you pastors who are a replica of the word? They are preachers of the word. They are not those who own the word of God. So let us clarify that error there.
They are humans.
They are humans. So don't go and set a pastor as your role model. Jesus is the way, one way, not several ways.
They could fall.
He is the truth, one truth.
They could fall into temptation.
Of course. When people begin to pattern their life after a preacher, it's an error. You cannot pattern your life after a preacher. A preacher is not the way. He is not the word of God. He is not the truth. A preacher can be a conveyor of the word, but he is not the word of God.
He's living his life, but he has passed his message.
That is assignment.
Okay.
That is assignment.
Just to add something. You see, it's very important for us to understand not everyone who stands to preach the gospel is actually meant to preach the gospel.
Okay.
So at times you see individuals who have the Bible in their hands, but it is not their duty to do it. So it is normal for them to prey on people. So when you see such a person, you do not generalize it on everybody. Okay. It's not everybody.
Okay, I want to take this from for Richard, who is also a forum member. He's watching us from...
I've seen it.
He's watching us from America. He has this to contribute. He says, Apostle Ambe, Prof. Mark, Anthony, and Kum Leonard. I'm following the interesting debate currently going on the program on morality, and I would like to give my input here. Most of the panelists seem to blame the moral decadence in our society on the known recognition of a pass in religious studies at the GC as the major cause of immorality. I will beg to differ there. No, I'm sure he's reacting to some messages. There are many messages yes, no, I've read them out, written by people who are contributing. It would be great for the state to place value to the subject by recognizing it like other subjects, but its known recognition is not a major factor for the alarming rate of immorality in our society today. It is not as if the government suddenly decides to recognize these certificates, morality will disappear. We should understand that before 1995, religion was never a subject in the GCE, but the level of immorality was not as alarming as it is today. Children are fed with religious education from several other sources other than formal education in the churches, from gospel TV channels, etc. Therefore, in my opinion, lack of moral education in a formal setting is not very much the problem. Moral education should rather be a thing that is taught in informally rather. What people see and experience in their everyday life will contribute to their moral values. Teach values by demonstration. If what kids see is that it is normal to bribe a police officer when you don't have an ID, they will grow up knowing there is nothing wrong in bribing. If they grow seeing their parents sleeping with other men or women, they will grow up feeling that it is okay to be promiscuous. If what we teach our kids is that it's okay to receive bribe, to vote, or to stuff ballot boxes, then they will grow up to know that cheating is okay. No amount of moral education in a formal school setting is going to change that in their minds. Kids need to grow up seeing how good actions are appreciated and deadly consequences of bad actions. While not trying to claim America is perfect place, my experience here is that people get into a shopping, pick up items and move to a machine where they pay for those items in their own. It is very easy to make away hundreds of dollars worth of items without being caught, but nobody dares try that. You know why? Because the consequences of being caught living with even a pen without paying for it can ruin your entire life. Not only do you risk going to jail, but it also enters your record, and you may never get employment in any private or public agency. Okay. For Richard here, Dr. Tata says that we need to structure our communities, actually put measures and principles that would heavily sanction whosoever is caught in most of the deviant activities that are destroying our nation and community.
Yes, I mean that is a very solid point, and that is why I continue to insist on the fact that we should be able to marry what we teach the children in school with what society advocates for, what society awards. Because if you teach children in school certain values and then you award in a society the opposite of those values that those children learn in school, then you realize that it's going to be at conflict. Of course, the punishment for I was just reading through the news, and I stumbled across two interesting items that are so related to what we are discussing. I stumbled across an article on a woman who was stripped naked, and because she stole, and she actually wrote a complaint to the gendarmerie complaining that she was stripped naked, claiming her right. So you see the society in which we live. You see, you are now confused. Which one is the greater crime? Is it that she stole or that she was stripped naked? So, and that is the level to which we have really gone down. But like I continue to say, we have to be able to put laws in place. We have to be able to put principles in society, to teach these principles and marry them with society. Because if the things that children learn in school are different from the things that the laws of the nation or the society practices, then there is bound to be a conflict. There is bound to be a lack of synchrony. Even what people do in church. If of course, I listen to the other panelists talk a lot about religion and spirituality. There's a huge difference between religion and spirituality. And you even want to go further to ask yourself, how does the state value the religious knowledge or the teaching of spirituality? Look at the coefficients of the subjects. So so that one already tells you what value is attached to the teaching of religion, religious.
Yeah, but then, doctor, the prevalence is also very high amongst the elderly. I'm talking about adults. What accounts for that? We are talking about deterring measures that should be put in place so that we know that there are certain things that we ought not to do in our communities.
Yeah, of course, the youths of yesterday are the elders of today. So you realize that the youths, that what the youths learn, the society of yesterday, the limit, the age of people that form the youths of yesterday will form the leaders of today. And those things that they were doing yesterday that were not corrected, they are not going to suddenly they are not suddenly going to change when they become ministers or when they become lawyers and things like that. So a good number of them will still have those things that they believe. You see, when people want to argue certain things with certain convictions, it is because, why? It's because they have considered that, they have thought that in their life, they practiced that and they didn't see anything quite wrong with it. So you find them arguing on certain things or defending certain positions.
Okay.
And they would call it, you see, they would call it human rights. And they will call it human rights. This is something that is killing society as a whole. You realize that if you want to use the whole concept of human rights, you realize that you will destroy society in an African context, because the values that an African society, the Africans have, is different from this westernization of African societies. The laws that we are using today is copy and paste what the Westerners believed in. But if we had to uphold our own laws, if we had to uphold our own value systems, you will realize that those principles, some of those principles of human rights, some of them could be positive.
Okay.
Copy some positive things from there,
okay,
but not just entirely copy and paste it. So I'm sorry, let me just end by saying that if you look at the issue of homosexuality today, you realize that there are certain things that we've signed, there are certain things that we've committed ourselves as a nation on. And it is holding us in our neck right now. We are wondering whether it should be legalized or not. And some of us some people are defending it, and some of us are saying that no, let us uphold our African values.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu and crew. Talking of immorality, teachers are far better than politicians. Sorry to say, some politicians used stolen money to influence a dozen of young girls from Bambili and Bambui. Our politicians with the stolen monies are using it to cause havoc to our young girls. Nonchalant lecturers and some secondary school teachers are equally practicing this abominable act. We parents should be friendly towards our children, so much so that they can report all these illegal acts to us when need be. Prince Ndiwum is watching from Stockholm in Sweden. You insisted that I read your message. It has been read. Let Apostle Ambe redress that statement. He and the rest of the panel just said children copy from parents, elders, or peers. So a pastor is a believer in Christ and should be light to others by living exactly what he preached. Okay. The preacher of the word must be worthy of the message. The Bible says he must be without blemish. 1 Timothy 3. If preachers cannot live up to his qualifications, then he is a curse to his followers than blessing. He is the voice of the devil in their lives. Even the devil himself is a big preacher of God's word. Matthew 4. Okay. Good evening to all parents here. Should give kids little liberty. Do not keep your kids at home 24/7. Let them explore, hang out with friends, but give them time to return home. At least tell them every weekend they can hang out with friends. Keeping them at home always gives them the chance to learn everything they see on TV. Sandra is writing from Yaoundé. Sandra, that could also be sending them to the Lions Den. Okay, good evening, Mr. Liu, and a special greetings to Apostle Ambe Valentine. I think the high rate of sexual immorality in Cameroon is influenced by our environment. Thus, our youths are extremely exposed to what they see, and again, the education sector is slightly falling as they have not been able to fully introduce the teachings of moral education from the primary level, not leaving out our parents who are equally failing in training their kids morally. Ngong Menek Neville, writing from Yaoundé. Good evening to you, Neville. This one says, good evening, Mr. Liu and everyone in the studio. This is my first time writing, but I'm a big fan of your program. You are doing a great job, and how I wish all what you people have been saying and teaching is put into practice by all citizens. To analyze all what you have been saying for today's debate, I would say the best education for our children is the basic education, and parents are responsible for this. Let parents make their children their friends and be open to them about things like sexuality. If not, they will learn out there. Thanks. Donatus Ngaru is writing from Simbok in Yaoundé. Mabel writing from Bankolo in Yaoundé says, hello Mr. Leo and the entire panel. I think the bulk of blame goes to the parents, because most parents fold their arms and don't teach their kids about sexual life, saying it's a taboo or that they have been taught in school. Now, Dr. Tata raised this whole concept of human rights. Is that also something that is playing as a stumble block to discipline and restrictive measures on some of these very bad acts that are occurring in our communities?
I'm sure he's speaking from the angle of the West, because that human right of a thing doesn't actually have much value here in this country. Yes, it's in the West, America, Europe, that you will see that human rights stuff begin very, very rampant.
Yeah, but there's no corporal punishment in our schools.
That's
like, yeah, but it's in Cameroon now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That what about human rights? There are laws put in place that in case
there are people in Cameroon who are using human rights to advocate for homosexuality and lesbianism to be,
which has not been given.
Yes,
it has not been given. When it is a human right, it means it's something that's endorsed. It is not a human right if you are restricted to do it. If there's still restriction, it's not called a human right. If it's a human right, then it's supposed to be endorsed. And most of those things have not been endorsed. In Cameroon, yes, some persons were locked some few months ago because they practice homosexuality. So it's not yet endorsed in this country. It's not yet a human right in this country. Secondly, our schools stop corporal punishment for reasons best known to them. But I don't think that one is enough reason for why people are misbehaving. I'm sure we are talking these things like this, we fail to understand that there are ethnic groups who have another perspective concerning sex. Culturally speaking, there are people who look at sex as a privilege. You hear somebody is coming from a particular tribe, they value sex so much. Those things contribute. If you meet such a person, the person is not corrupted by virtue of the environment they have grown. It's because of their ethnic background. Such a community values and places so much, how do I put it, respect for sex. So we cannot sideline those things. And also, we cannot sideline the place of spiritual manifestations. There are a lot of demonic spirits that also influence. How do you explain that a father may develop interest for a daughter? How do you explain that a matured man will begin to develop interest for a child that has not developed breasts? Because there are secondary female sexual characteristics on a girl that has to push you to awaken your drive towards the person. Then you see a man who is teaching class 6 in primary school and he sleeps with the class 6 people that have never even developed breasts. How do you explain that? It tells you that there are some extraordinary forces that influence some of these activities also. And we always shy away from those very, very deep realities because we want to use our senses to judge almost everything. There are some things that are very, very spiritual. Very, very spiritual. How can a man develop interest for a man? How can a woman develop interest for a woman? It must be some demonic force operating. Some masculine spirit that has taken over a feminine container and is trying to develop interest for another feminine container. It is terrible. So I'm sure we cannot minimize the place of spiritual manifestation and spiritual manipulations, which are also very influential factors that help to increase the rise of sexual immorality in the society. I'm very, very sure we should not just put the issue of some human rights stuff, because I don't see the human rights stuff really effective in our country, Cameroon. Our laws have restricted a lot of those things, and the flexibility here is very, very limited. So I don't see the human rights stuff as one of the major or one of a principal factor. It could play a very minute role in influencing the the rise of sexual immorality in the society, I have said that demonic manifestations are also influencing the activities of this rise in sexual activities.
Okay. But how do we control it? We have just 10 more minutes.
Prayers.
Yeah. Okay. We should pray.
Oh, we need prayers. We need prayers. Pray that you may not fall into temptation. That's what Jesus said.
Okay. How do we control this situation so that we reduce its rate?
Being practical, Mr. Leo, I want to say the African community primarily is a very spiritual community. And so it is necessary for us to go back in building our communities from the very foundation, which is the family, by inculcating into our kids the values, the human values, which were passed to us from our ancestral background. And apart from that, you see, it is funny how we have the Bible today amidst us, which contains very strong positive values, but we still are having a misconstrued community. We have to go back to our homes. Let us engage in teaching our kids, not only teaching them, but living by example for them to copy. Because as I said earlier, children actually copy what they see. So parents have to be able to live their best for their children to become the best. I mentioned something earlier about my life, how I grew almost alone. But based on the fact that I spent some time with my grandmother, there were some values that were inculcated into me that actually did not permit me to go wayward. That is what I think we need to go back doing. Some of us, we consider our grandmothers today as witches. You see, young people are growing. They already have a negative mindset concerning their grandmothers based on the ideologies that have been inculcated to them from their society, where the elderly have become outcasts. The elderly have become witches, but they are the persons who have that capacity to impact those cultural values we are talking about. So we must create that connection that used to exist between the elderly and the young, so that knowledge can be successfully transmitted between these two. If not, we will be heading for a more disastrous community, which I think some of us will watch what is happening in Europe today. It will not be compared to that, because the moral decadence would have been enrooted right deep within the children to an extent where it will be just normal for them to do whatsoever they wish to do in a coming future on the street. So we must go back to reshape these kids from the very foundation, which is in our family bedrooms. Let's teach them, let's show them what African values and cultures actually have.
Okay. Yes. How do we fix our society, Mr. Emmanuel?
Yes, the family is the basic unit of the society, and before it goes right to the top, it must begin from the family. Parents have to rethink their relationship with their children. They have to rethink the activities that their children are permitted to do. If there's one thing I learned from Apostle Ambe today, which is very important, is that these gadgets that we give to our children, they can become tools of destruction if they are given at the age which they are not supposed to. Now, when the family would have succeeded in doing so, let the school take the relay baton, continue from where the family started, which at this time now is formal. We are not saying that teachers must become saints, because in school we are taught ethics and deontology, not morality. But yes, we are societal shapers. We have to shape the morals of these children. And thirdly, the government has to see into it that there is a code on education that punishes teachers squarely who practices any act of immorality, be it in the school milieu or be it out of school. It should even be added that if a teacher is caught in an extraordinary crime, even out of the school, let his punishment be heavier than the one of another common citizen, because a teacher is a light, a teacher is a model, a teacher is a leader. If we could take the example of Jesus Christ, of course, Apostle Ambe will not tell me that it is first. That was the first teacher, and he taught by examples. If the teachers could teach by example, I think all these things will reduce. And then the state officials who have turned themselves as sex dolls, I think another punishment should be reserved for them, which is very heavy, so that if a state official is caught in any act of immorality, he should be severely punished. We cannot live in an era where an SDO who is supposed to command his people ends up dying on top of a young girl of 20-something years. So I think collectively, if all this is put into play, Mr. Leo, the immorality will reduce.
Okay, the immorality is going to reduce. We are going to be ending at this juncture. I want to say thank you to you, Dr. Tata, for taking part in today's edition of the program.
Thank you very much, and it's always a pleasure.
Okay, and also to you, Apostle Ambe Valentine. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Leo. Thank you, Cameroonians, for the privilege to talk to you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Leo, and to my fellow panelists and to the great people of Cameroon and Africa who are listening to us.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Ndiwum.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Leo. As I take this 1 minute to wish a happy birthday to Barrister Tamfo Richard, who is always one of us, and that may God continue to bless him.
Okay, we want to thank you all who took time off to watch the program this evening, and to the production team. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.